Welcome to Airwave. Airwave is a conversation hosted by me, Morgan Page, where music and technology converge to tell the stories behind the artists and the architects of creativity and technology. Radio is where I first discovered electronic music in the countryside of Vermont, and music and technology provided the path forward. Airwave is an exploration of how people make their art and how technology plays an essential role in the process. The show is largely conversational, but doesn't shy away from going deep and technical in the process.
I remember Avicii first tried him on. He's like, this is the future. I mean, he was producing most of his tracks on the V-Modas. Headphones are an insignificant category, they told me. And that's why we put them behind the alarm clock radios. And so I really wasn't sure if we were going to succeed at that point, because everyone said that the headphones were not fashion, and I really was like trying to knock it over the head. And so I'm like, wow, this is the biggest opportunity I've ever seen in my life. I got to create designer headphones.
All right, welcome to Airwave. This week, my guest is Val Kolton. He is the founder of V-Moda headphones, the man who put the V in V-Moda. They're one of the first brands to make headphones fashionable long before Beats, with some models costing over $40,000 for a rare platinum 3D printed version. But most of the versions you've seen used by DJs like Martin Garrix, the Chainsmokers, Avicii when he was still around, are the $200 Crossfades, a legendary pair of headphones that is a personal favorite of mine, used for touring, used for the podcast right now. So we talk a lot about the early beginnings of the company, the thought process behind every little detail in the design, everything from the case to the plates to the cushions and how they impact the sound quality. So go deep into the design philosophy, how we built the patents, how we built the whole process of the company. V-Moda was later sold to Roland, and now Val is starting new ventures that will use his strengths in design and fashion. So excited to see where he goes next. It's a great discussion. We get deep into the details as usual in Airwave. So enjoy. This is Airwave with Morgan Page. Airwave is brought to you by RME Audio. Innovative, user-friendly, and high-quality digital audio solutions, RME offers a comprehensive range of audio interfaces, converters, and mic preamps, all based around its unique and innovative core technologies. Multi-platform connectivity across Windows and Mac OS and iOS class compliance has earned RME a global reputation for providing support to all users on all platforms. Visit rme-usa.com to learn more. I wanted to start out with the background, starting from the beginning. I was researching you and trying to get a little more information, and it's almost mysterious. I see some background info on you, but take me back to Texas and growing up there and how you got into this crazy world of tech.
Yeah, so, I always thought I was going to try to be like the next Bill Gates or Larry Ellison, and so I studied MIS, Management Information Systems at University of Texas at Austin, which at the time was the third best school in the country, behind MIT and Carnegie Mellon. So I really wanted to get a technical background in programming, but also have a business, add the business layer to my knowledge. So it was in the business school. And so I studied, before that I've been programming since I was a little kid, since I was like 7. So I've always just been a really diehard do-it-yourselfer and, taking apart every toy, building RC cars, building my own car stereo systems the day I turned 16. And it's really kind of gave me a lot of that background of my dad. I was lucky that my dad gave me the tools to allow me to learn and kind of guided me and got me programming books when I was 7 and helped me to learn how to program when I was just a little kid, basically. And so I think that really kind of that do-it-yourself kind of electrical and build-it-yourself mentality has just kind of always been in my DNA.
And what did your dad do for a living?
Attorney, did tax law and real estate trusts and wills and stuff.
So did he have a love of engineering and electronics as well?
Yeah, it was interesting because he was into RC cars, radio controlled cars. He was really into engines, like in boats and stuff like that, little small boats, and so he was always into car mechanics more than anything, and really a car fanatic. But he saw that I really liked computers. He wasn't a computer guy. He's kind of before his time. He was more the calculator guy in his era. But he definitely saw that I loved the first computers that came out, from the TI-81 to the Commodore 64s. And so he saw how much joy it brought in my life to have the early IBMs and Tandy 1000s. And those things were expensive back then. So the fact that I was the only person using them, and he actually spent a lot of money back in the day to get me a PC set up, which was not cheap back then. I mean, it's $4,000 to $5,000, I'm sure.
Were you programming games on the TI-82?
I remember the first thing was Hello World in like the GW Basic or whatever it was back then. And yeah, that really, I just remember sitting in that basement, just relentlessly learning how to program and download games back then, and go on bulletin board services before the internet, because you used to have to call one modem to another modem. You can always go point to point. Computers weren't networked back then.
Yeah.
So it was really an interesting era. And then to see how everything grew up to then be in 1984, where we made steps up in the video games and all the way to the Nintendos, and then to where we are today, and all the technology that's followed along that has been I think we were lucky years to grow up then, because we saw the technology go from nothing, from just cassette tapes, in 8 tracks when I was first, growing up, to then see the first PCs and the first gaming machines, and then all the way to where we are today in the future with AR and VR. And it's really an exciting time to see that whole trajectory in real time and trying to be on top of it.
I remember when people thought that the internet was this fad, it was a thing, and nobody thought you'd purchase anything online. That was like a real public opinion at the time, it's just a little weird technology trend and it'll blow over. Yeah,
I remember when I first saw the internet, it's like in the library, like I think it was like Gopher or something. And, it was like the first time I started using it. I'm like, this is actually, in some email there, I'm like, this is actually pretty cool. I could see that this could be really useful. And then what started off as the library education system, is kind of IP technologies enabled everything. Because just paying long distance to call one computer was just very expensive at the time.
And installing that second phone line was a real task, a real expense.
Yeah,
it was like $100 just to get it installed. And
and I lived in an area code that didn't have too many good computers to call, so getting my parents to try to get me to call long distance was not really kind of in their budget.
Yeah. What was the town you grew up in?
I grew up in Arlington, where the Dallas Cowboys Stadium is. Previous to that, I was born in Chicago.
It's so funny that you mentioned Arlington, because have you been following what the Cirque du Soleil founder is doing in Arlington right now?
No.
He's launching the Pyramid. So his next form of live entertainment is going to be resting on 5G to kind of scale the event and the performance. It's an immersive experience, and they've built these pyramids in Arlington.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of an interesting area. Growing up, they put a lot of the entertainment stuff there. So like the baseball stadium, Six Flags, Wet 'n Wild, and then they put the baseball stadium, the Cowboys stadium is all there. So
it's between Dallas and Fort Worth.
Yeah, it's in between Dallas and Fort Worth, because it's one mega city, and it's in between the two. They've been doing some big esports, which I'm going to check out next time I go there.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of a cool area of the country. And Austin, where I went to school, is definitely the hotbed for technology, and kind of where everyone's heading to nowadays as well. So Texas has a good future in technology and entertainment.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
So you knew early on, you got your 10,000 hours in early, before you were 12. Did you have enough coding experience to know this is what you wanted to do?
Yeah. I pretty much just said die hard. There was no going back. I'm going to be in technology. I thought I was going to be a programmer, then of course hopefully be a manager. And at the time, I wanted to just work for some big technology companies. Like I just wanted to work for Microsoft or Apple or Oracle or something. I wasn't really thinking about starting my own back then. But after graduating college, being an information systems consultant, and did database programming, a lot of Microsoft certified engineering, built complex databases. I think my first big project was the billing system for the state of Texas, TXU's billing system to bill customers. So that was kind of a huge project, and my brain's still doing the billing system for that database and creating the database tables and the stored procedures. It still keeps me up at night still today.
You're still working on the project in your mind?
Yeah, it was tough, man.
I feel like it's like waking up and realizing you haven't showed up to class all year. This is a nightmare I have, where it's like I haven't been to class all year and I'm taking the test and I don't have any of the answers.
Yeah, I still feel like I still have this nightmare that I didn't finish my last course in school, and yet I did.
Yeah,
so
like your credit's short. Totally.
Yeah, I'm one credit short, and I don't know why I have that. It's a common dream, I guess, for people. But it's great. It's great to wake up and once I unpack, find my diploma again, and I'll have to put the diploma on the wall and be like, dude, you actually did take all your classes, and you did pretty good too.
Yeah, it's a recurring dream.
Got almost straight A's.
So you were doing the software work then, and then what led to getting into the hardware development? How did you make that leap?
Well, the hardware kind of came later. I was working as a management consultant, doing IT consulting and management consulting in Dallas, and then was going to work for Enron.
Wow.
So I quit that job, and I was actually going to work for Enron, and then they kind of went belly up, and I was without a job while I was on vacation. I found out in California, so I said, I don't have a job anymore. So guess I'm going to go back to school. I was actually developing a lot of technology like that is today Waze and Google Maps. And I thought I had a lot of patents because I knew that GPS was going to be integrated into phones eventually. So I was like going to go to law school. This guy wanted me to work for an advertising company doing the technology for it, to do email blast and email marketing and all sorts of marketing online. And so we did the Truth campaign, the anti-smoking commercials, which you might have remember.
Yeah.
We actually became the agency of charge of that Truth campaign. And so I was running all the advertising for that. So I learned a lot about the marketing and then also running the CRM system. So that kind of taught me a lot in different areas that I really wanted to polish up on, and messaging and branding and working with a lot of artists. So that was a really cool way to get me to branch out of just the technology and then work with artists on all the, coming up with new cool, there was a really cool and edgy ad campaign. So it really taught me a lot about branding. And I think that really helped me when I decided to start V-Moda and developing a brand,
What pushed you to make hardware? Like, did you see headphones out there and weren't satisfied with what was being offered?
Well, I was in a trip to Ibiza, which was the first time I ever left North America. And I just thought that when I heard this electronic music and I saw people singing along to some early songs, these European girls actually know these songs like pop songs. And I was like really just floored that they could actually sing along, and I could see them in the streets singing, in Paris and in Italy after I left Ibiza. And I'm like, these people are actually singing these pop songs. House music, electronic music is going to be outside the warehouse someday. And I was always into warehouse and underground stuff, but Europe's really, it's already becoming mainstream. I'm like, this is the future. So I really decided right then and there on that plane ride, I was going to quit my job and just do something around music and create a music brand. I originally thought I was just going to get into production and DJing and just become a music producer of house music or create a record label. And the hardware actually came later after I kind of created this music lifestyle brand in my head and kind of created the name already, V-Moda. And then I bought the highest end speakers I could, which are actually outside in my truck right now that I just got out of storage, which was some $12,000 pair of speakers that I maxed out my credit card on. And my roommate, I got all my production equipment set up, and my roommate was like, you know what, you better get some headphones or I'm moving out. And so then I kind of went on this audio quest for the best headphones, and that's when I discovered that there wasn't any good headphones out there. But then I started to get into headphones, but I wasn't going to make them. I just was trying to buy them. So I went to Japan and just kind of went collecting headphones and kind of got into that as well. Just like I like car stereo speakers and I like home speakers. But then what really happened was I was on Cannon Drive or Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. I saw a girl walk out of her Rolls Royce and she was wearing the white earbuds. And I was like, wow, you know what? I just went looking for headphones, and I just bought some really cool home speakers that were red, and she's wearing white plastic earbuds out of a Rolls Royce, and she's wearing like a feather hat, and I was like, wow, fashion headphones, that's the future. I had the ball on the 3-yard line, and there was like no defense at all. This might be like a 97-yard run to get a touchdown, but there's no defense at all playing. There is 0 colored headphones in the market. And
it wasn't fashion.
Yeah.
So it was just an accessory.
You can only get black and white headphones back then. Apple actually, in fact, before Apple, I remembered in the 80s, I had all these yellow Sony Walkman headphones the yellow meant active or sport. And I was like, wow, there used to be colored headphones. And then all of a sudden, there was only white and black, and white was because of the AirPods or the iPods. And then I'm like, okay, there's got to be colored headphones somewhere. So there was 0 in America. So I traveled to Japan, 0. I was shocked.
So it was just the Sony sports versions of the Walkman.
There was yellow,
right? Yeah.
In the 80s. They weren't even selling them, I don't think, at the time, or they weren't easily found. And then there was just white and black, and that was it, and gray. And so I went to Japan. I'm like, okay, sure. At this time, there was already cases for the iPods. It was iPods back then only. There was cases to make your iPod different color, like pink, but you couldn't get a pink headphone anywhere.
Yeah.
And I went to China. I'm like, sure enough, they've got to have colored headphones in China. Nope. There were some caps on the headphones that would be like pink, but I couldn't find any with a color cable that was besides white and black. So I'm like, wow, this is the biggest opportunity I've ever seen in my life. I got to create designer headphones in metal, and I got to make colored headphones. So I made. So then I went on this rush to develop headphones, and I made 11 colors is what I launched with. I can't patent colored headphones, but I was the first to come out with colored headphones. So, it's kind of, nowadays I look at, every time I go to a 7-Eleven and I see colored headphones at the cash register for a couple bucks, or they're giving away on Virgin airplanes or something. I don't know. Colored headphones. I'm like, geez, it's kind of hard to believe that I was the first person to invent colored headphones. I knew we'd be copied quickly. Skull Candy came out like right after us, and they saw me at a trade show, and then the guy must have had a light bulb go off in his head. I kind of showed my cards too early, and then Skull Candy and other brands copied, very quick. But that's why I came up with metal headphones, because I knew that they were going to copy us on the low end. But I figured let's go high and medium end, and started do $200 headphones immediately, and then hopefully get our price points up to $300 and do over-ear headphones. And so that was how kind of the industry got jump started, I think, quite a bit.
So in Apple, you were saying, was more minimal with their color focus at that time, because before they had all the iMacs and this, all these different versions with the translucent computers. There was the translucent version, but there was a blue, and they looked like candy at that time. Yeah. And then did Apple just pivot in their creative approach, where they just said we need to go more minimal, just grays, whites, blacks?
Yeah, well, I think it was a brilliant move by Apple. Is what they did is with the iPods and the iPod Nanos. It's so hard to even say iPod now, because you're just not used to words.
It's out of your vocabulary.
It's like out of my vocabulary. I'm like, am I supposed to say AirPod or AirPod? No, iPods. So if you remember, they made like a U2 edition, special edition Project Reds versions. So I partnered with them, and we would, the day that they would come out with like a Project Red version of the iPod Nano, or was the iPod and U2 editions, I would color match and make sure that we had a headphone to match. But they, remember, their billboards always had that white headphone with a shadow person. So that was kind of their image, was to always go with the white headphone. And that was like, and then have the colored iPod variations. But they always wanted to stay focused with the white headphone. As you see, even today with the AirPods, they only have it in white. And they really, except for Beats, which is owned by Apple, they still have only made a white headphone since the beginning of the fact. I guess since any time that I've known that Apple's made a headphone, they've always been white. So they've really kept with that theme, just like their power adapters, I guess.
And tell me about when you first teamed up with Apple. Like, this was the groundswell that really launched everything. Like, how did this all come about?
Yeah, I remember my first customer that I sold to was actually Virgin Music Store. And then I'm like, okay, we're going to actually make it. So I was going door to door selling headphones, and then they're like, oh, you shouldn't sell those into fashion stores, they're technology. I'm like, no, headphones are wearable technology. They're like, no fashion stores would even see me out. They're like, sell to Best Buy. And then I went to Best Buy, and they're like, well, headphones are an insignificant category, they told me. And that's why we put them behind the alarm clock radios. And so I really wasn't sure if we were going to succeed at that point, because everyone said that the headphones were not fashion, and I really was like trying to knock it over the head. And Best Buy was saying that headphones are just not a significant category, and fashion stores said that they're not fashion, they're technology. So I was really kind of stuck, and then I ended up getting some meetings with Apple, and that's really where things really took off. And they kind of saw my vision, and they saw it, and they thought it was pretty brilliant. And I ended up working really closely with them and developing the first, getting our first products out, the Vibe, which was our third product that we launched. And that was really the Vibe was my first product I wanted to launch. I just had to launch a couple before that to kind of learn how to develop headphones. And then I really worked closely with Apple to develop the product and the color selection and the packaging. And I was up at night at 1 a.m. and the guys, the buyers there at the time, were really energetic and really liked me a lot. So it was a great working relationship with Apple, and we specifically tailored the products to sell at the Apple Store, and we really became their go-to high-end headphone brand, and that was really what put us on the map.
Yeah. And so how did you get prototypes done? Like, were you hand building these at first and soldering them in a lab, or how did you get a working version? Yeah,
well, so the very first colored headphones maybe in the world were spray painted on my back porch. So I actually took Apple's earbuds and spray painted them, and people were like laughing at me, like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I just want to kind of test what colored headphones look like, because I've never seen one except for the yellow Sonys. So that was the first. But then, of course, I went to sourcing and just found every single manufacturer I could, and I just went on a shotgun approach. I said, I don't know anything about making products in Asia, so I just got samples from every single company in Korea and China and any place else that was making headphones. I said, send me your best samples and the best sounding ones, and then I kind of narrowed it down. Like, there's 3 that sounded good out of like 300 factories I worked with. Wow. And so I visited those 3 factories in person after I got all the samples in from Alibaba or whatever it's still Alibaba, I think, back then is what I kind of used, and then found all the factories that made headphones, and then selected the 3 that sounded the best, and those are the factories that I used to begin with.
So these are OEMs, original equipment manufacturers?
Well, they have the OEMs, they'll tailor it for you. And then to even source cables in color at the time, they couldn't even source colored cables. It was a really interesting time, but we finally got them to get the cable companies to make different colors, and then Pantone matching the cables to the headphones units themselves was just a very big pain back then because they weren't used to it. So getting them to match properly was almost impossible. Now it's much easier because now people make a lot of colored headphones. So, but back then it was a very new field.
Yeah, we take it for granted now that it's fashion and it's something you wear on your neck.
Yeah, like I can't believe we did like dozens of prototypes to like match a red cap to a red cable and different painting processes. And I'm like, geez, why can't this be done easily nowadays? I mean, you just don't even have to worry about that. They have all the color calibration machines and people how to make colored cables now pretty easily. So it's not even a worry anymore.
And I remember even in the DJ world, the aesthetic was pretty bulky and boring and black and silver, and I won't mention the manufacturers, but they were really unergonomic and heavier, and they would make loud snapping sounds when you pivot the ear cup. Yeah,
so I mean, really, my first headphone that I ever envisioned was just doing this masterpiece headphone made out of marble. That was like kind of my grand vision of like what I wanted to make at the very first headphone, and it was more kind of like a DJ over-ear headphone. And we never actually even launched it, but everything that I dreamed of kind of made its way into what I actually developed. And you know, when you mentioned what DJs and audiophiles were listening to, and what a lot of them still do, it's just this very bulky, circular thing that really looks like a piece of their DJ equipment versus on their head versus a fashion or something that's an extension of their personality. And that's really where I wanted to develop the headphones to be more of an extension of the person and your headwear versus like your actual mixer, which is kind of what it reminded me of. These mixers and CDJs and audiophile equipment is just very bulky, and you look like a helicopter pilot, you know?
Yeah.
And then the swivels were also a big deal because that made them very fragile. And DJs back then, when they had really bad swivels, they'd always tape up their swivel, so it kind of looked like they had like nerd glasses or something. So I was like, we got to get rid of the swivel. That's kind of where I thought of to make it more ergonomic. You know, I thought about how flip phones went out of style to kind of be more flat because of the hinges are tough to make, as we're seeing back today as we're doing new flip phones again. But hinges are a very difficult part of a product to make durable, and that's where we kind of went with the headband giving you the hinge-like, the flexible headband, the experience of being able to twist the headphone with that steel flex headband, but by keeping the ergonomics low profile, and then also making it so that you have less moving parts to break. So that's part of our big breakthrough with our over-ear headphones.
So I feel like there was the only slim, slightly ergonomic headphones were the Sennheisers that everybody had that were black, and then they had, I think Adidas did like a blue edition.
Yeah.
But those are the only ones, those ones I started with after trying a bunch of bulky brands that were just very plasticky and finicky.
Yeah.
And then, but the Sennheisers I never thought were, some people love the sound of them because they know that reference. They felt like the NS10s of DJ headphones, like not a ton of bass.
Yeah, very
good luck hearing on an airplane the edit you're working on or whatever.
Yeah. Sony's were very popular back then as the DJ headphones, and they still are pretty popular even for production. Some basic Sony's.
7506s?
7506s, those were just classics, right? I wanted to make I think the M100 kind of, the HD25 Sennheiser became a classic, but to me, they all have their own sound signatures, and to me, the HD25 is definitely very forward and bright, especially in 8 to 12K. It seems to be boosted. For some people, it's all right, but I was actually pretty young when I started V-Moda in my 20s and had pretty good hearing. In my highs, it's definitely too high and aggressive for me, and definitely not enough bass, because I really wanted to feel like I think that bass is such a great part of music, especially with house and dance music and modern pop music, that you really need that kick drum and the bass lines that you can feel. And
why was it so conservative with the way that these headphones are tuned at that time? That the bass was like, we don't want to go with the bass.
Bass was like a bad word, I mean, in the audiophile community, and it was really interesting. That's why I kind of coined the term modiophile. It's like a modern audiophile, because the music that I grew up listening to does have bass in it, and I want it to be in there. And I even remember speaking to so many producers that have produced on V-Modas, are like, I need the V-Moda because it has the bass in there and that kick drum that I need for when people listen to their headphones or listen to it at a club. I remember Avicii first tried them on. He's like, this is the future. I mean, he was producing most of his tracks on the V-Modas. And I think it was, it kind of got a bad rap in the audiophile community of thinking that the bass it was kind of a placebo effect, that the bass would run into the mids and muddy the mids or something somehow. And it probably did quite a bit on lots of bass heavy headphones like the there was like some big bass heavy headphones that were cheaper brands. And we kind of solved that problem by developing a dual diaphragm driver. So we kind of separated the bass layer from the mids so that it wouldn't distort, cross over as much without using a crossover. And that was kind of our breakthrough to give you that sub level and even get down to below 20 hertz that you can feel.
Yeah.
And then, but still while keeping that organic mid range and then really tweaking them to highs as well. So kind of taking it in 3 different approaches. The big part, going back to your question, also was not only the type of style of music that they're listening to. So when I went to these headphone meets, and the reason why audiophiles don't like bass, I was listening to the music, like, okay, what are they listening to? It's pretty much orchestral music and acoustic music and jazz that might have had a little bit of a bass guitar in there or something, but just really very instrumental and acoustic-based music. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes a little bit more sense then, because if it's all piano or orchestral, this isn't electronic music. Nothing they were listening to was even like Depeche Mode or something from the 80s that had electronic kick drums. It was all acoustics and instrumentals and stuff, or a lot of singing. I'm like, okay, well, that's maybe the style of their music of that older generation audiophile definitely didn't even have the requirements of having a bass drum.
And they would exaggerate in a way that wasn't complementary to the sound.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. When it was, all their music was recorded on real microphones from analog instruments, and nothing was like today with an electronic in a DAW where you can just drag and drop your envelopes for how much bass you want and if you want LFO or not, low frequencies. So now you can see more of a divide on the headphone forums and stuff that people say, okay, you're a bass head and you understand, you listen to music that has bass in it. And I think it's kind of going to shift now. So the future, pretty much all headphones and all the music, primarily the people that aren't listening to just like orchestral and some classical music will want to have much more bass presence, but still they want to have that clarity in the highs, which is really what our last headphones that I worked at with V-Moda and released, that we're able to get that nice bass extension, but make them Japan Audio Society high-res audio certified, past 40 kilohertz. So I kind of gave the best of both worlds. And then in the actual headphone itself, you can always EQ later if you really just want to drop out the low, below 60 hertz or something for certain styles of music.
It's funny because these engineers seem to want to capture realism and in a clinical way, like keeping it flat, but in a way, if it's applied to electronic music, it's taking away the whole vibe and actually is taking away realism from synthetic music.
If they say as the artist intended, any EDM or even modern pop music nowadays, which is become, kind of merging today, right? I mean, as you could say, or even hip hop music, it's all done on DAW, and they really want to have that, shoot, even in the 80s when I was listening to rap, Sir Mix a lot with my, they wanted to put that big kick drum in there and bass and, so... Yeah, I really think that it's we've seen a big shift to where the sound signatures have changed, and I think more and more. I think the M100 was my first sound curve where I think everyone was happy, from the audiophiles to the DJs. When the CrossFit LP came out, the DJs loved it and everyone loved it, but it was still the audiophiles thought it wasn't just right. So then I really did that crowdsourced tuning and got over 200 people involved, and I really kind of made it, okay, let's get it to. So we have a happy medium between where all of the most audiophile snobs on the forums and editors and PR people would approve of it, and also get the DJs to approve of it. And
how do you do that? How do you get that common ground? Because headphones are so subjective.
Yeah, so they are subjective. And then there's what's called the Fletcher-Munson curve, which is a psychoacoustic, where the highs and lows kind of change based on how loud you listen. But yeah, so really it just takes a lot of testing, and I'd always see what volume people are listening at, what they're listening to, what styles of music, and then really watch their feedback at the forums and meetups in person, and really kind of use my gut feeling. And at the end of the day, it's pretty hard to make a decision for like what possibly millions of people are going to listen to their headphones on, and I kind of
without watering it down too.
Yeah, so I felt like I had it's really difficult because I'm like, okay, whatever sound signature I end up with, hopefully millions of people also are going to be listening to their music through that, and so to make that final decision is always extremely difficult. But I just kind of think when I'm going through every person's head, at the final stages, I'm like, okay, that one guy that was listening to orchestral music at 50% volume, that's interesting. Is it going to sound good for him? That
right.
Definitely want to use a V-Moda, and I'm like, maybe I have to leave him out of the equation. Sometimes I might try out his song that I took a picture of at a meet and just try it out, and just all the voices in my head to to kind of make that final decision. And, a lot of it wasn't just the tuning of the headphone, but the tuning of the cushions, because that's the last mile to go to your ear. It's kind of like the room for speakers, and it's such an important part because everyone's head shape is so different. So,
how do you tune a material?
Well, there's a lot to do with it. So the volume that it allows, and there the actual softness of the material, the volume of the inside, how big the XY is, makes a big difference. When I was working at V-Moda, we actually did various size cushions, and then lots of holes inside of it. There's a lot of black magic that happens behind the scenes. Also, that maybe too much secret sauce to tell you today, but yeah, it's those little details in the airflow mechanics, porting after the fact. That in the stage of development, you always lock in the driver first, and then you can work on the airflow, the filters, and the tuning papers, and the cushions, and also the tension of the headbands to how tight they sit on your ears. So all those little things make such a huge variance. And of course, everyone's ears and heads are different. So slightly variances, but you're trying to minimize those variances and use a lot of test groups and a lot of measurements to make sure that different shapes of heads have similar forces on the ears.
And you were telling me even sweat makes a difference on the break-in of how it sounds.
Burn-in of drivers, or burn-in has to do with a little bit more of the colored material, and the pigments that are inside the material to color things can make a big difference. So whether it's an in-ear headphone with black fittings or clear fittings, the black's going to be a little bit stiffer, and might take a little bit more time than the clear fittings. So you'll have different sound signatures, even just based on the colored fittings on your headphones. So there's a lot of variables when you get down to the details that not many consumers know about, and or even want to think about. Once you know the details, there is a true amount of time that you should test out a speaker or a headphone and really get used to it, and also make sure you have the right size fittings for your head.
And so that is a real thing, though, of burn-in. I mean, I feel like the V-Modas sound good out of the gate already, and some hi-fi companies are like, well, you gotta, maybe it's more with speakers, but you gotta have like 200 hours of burn-in or something just to get the sound. Is that less of an issue these days?
I think that burn-in is a little bit of an interesting thing, because one thing is you're starting to get used to it too. You're starting to adjust, like maybe just as much as your headphones or your speakers are starting to adjust, because it's something new and different, right? So
you can have that knee-jerk reaction to something.
Yeah, you might have a knee-jerk reaction, but from a real physical perspective, there definitely is the coils, the membranes, that they do need some time to kind of adjust and get into their groove. And like we just discussed, the pigments need to break and loosen up a bit. But on the manufacturing assembly line, you're always doing really strict testing to make sure that they sound as they should out of the box, no matter what. So I think the burn-in definitely is the last little 2% or 3% of making it sound in its final stages. But 98% of it is already locked in at the factory.
Nice. Okay, so you've had the success with this groundswell working with Apple. You were able to partner with them on these projects and had a lot of success with that. So were they licensing the tech, or was it just more of a partnership?
Yeah, I mean, with Apple and V-Moda, we really were just working close with them as a close vendor, and trying to be their fastest moving vendor. So like the day that the iPhone launched, we had our headphones ready to go in the store. So we were the only company that could ever pull that off, because essentially a one-man wrecking crew of me and my helpers, but I could make all the decisions really quickly, and had some good help that would execute so we could get headphones out quickly and really launch them on time with them. And
did you have family working with you at the time, when the early V-Moda days?
My brother helped out at the very beginning, but it was mostly me. And then I hired, the first person that we hired was a guy named Joe Bucknell, who developed our artwork and brand design and with me. And then I hired some people that had worked from different various headphone companies to kind of help me with the sourcing and quality control, which has always just been the biggest headache of building a product.
So you get some of the DNA in from other companies, people with a lot of headphone experience.
Yeah, so I brought, JBL at the time was headquartered near in Los Angeles, and so brought in some people from there, and brought in some people that had worked with Sennheiser at the very beginning, and various companies to get that quality control and engineering experience that I didn't have at the time.
You're like the Tesla of headphones.
Maybe.
I feel like they've reassembled all the gene pool of the best of the car industry into one company. People think it all comes from scratch, but it's really a recombination of that industry knowledge.
Yeah. It's kind of funny to see, all the headphone brands that followed us and were born from us, and employees that then founded other companies, and really, from Beats, the guys calling me before they founded Beats, and just all the people that kind of were inspired by us, and then what happened in the fashion headphone industry, and then the celebrity headphone industry that then followed after that, which was just a horrible, dark period of headphones where even Snooki was making her own headphones, and then
bedazzling headphones.
It was just a really bad era of this celebrity headphones, and we never did that. So we tried to always, make the headphone be for you, and that's why we did the customization and made you endorse yourself was the saying that we came up with, versus doing celebrity headphones, which I thought were really cheesy.
Instead of wearing someone else's style, you could do your own style.
Yeah, so I think that really caught on with the DJs, and I really want to promote yourself, and you should be all about Morgan Page, you should be all about Avicii or whatever brand. Whether you're just a normal DJ doing weddings, you really need to promote yourself on social media and have your name on your headphones to make a name for yourself.
It's one of the few fashion points you can make as a DJ, since I feel like I always end up wearing a dark V-neck or something.
Yeah. It's so funny. I mean, DJs kind of wear jeans and T-shirts, but the headphones has definitely got to be the part of your attire that stands out.
What's funny? I remember that V-Moda is being used as a reference. I went at Beats meetings. So like Jimmy Iovine asked me to come in and meet with him. I don't know if I ever told you this story. It was Zed's manager told me like, oh, Jimmy wants to meet you, and we're working on some headphones. And I think it was for Guetta's line of Beats. And I came in and they had V-Moda set up, a couple other, I think some Sennheisers. They had like their competitors.
Yeah.
And I picked up the V-Modas and I said, why does everyone grab those? What do you like about them so much? And they were like quizzing me on V-Modas. And it was a real quick meeting. And I guess they were building the design, because basically Guetta's version of the Beats were basically Sennheisers that sounded better and were even louder. But it was just a funny moment where... Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously Beats, I've heard the same stories where they had a lot of V-Modas around and our marketing material. And then of course once they started, and I didn't think that they were going to be so big. So I was like, okay, they'll just be another little headphone company, not a big competitor, but just help build the industry and out bigger, and then to see where they went. And of course we followed our own path. I always wanted to create metal headphones and do it the hard way.
They're still very different headphones.
Yeah, they're so different. I mean, so I don't think that we had a lot of overlap of customers, in fact,
But you both knew the strong suit was fashion.
Yeah, I think you'd say that definitely, putting design as a big part of it, element, and saying that bass could be in a nice headphone, which they eventually finally got.
Don't be scared of bass.
Yeah, don't be scared of bass. But I think that the people that bought V-Modas were definitely different consumers, so I didn't see them as a competitor forever. Seen it as more of a, kind of helping to build the highway and getting the word out there that there can be different alternatives for different horses for different courses. If you saw in the people wearing V-Modas versus Beats, DJs and different genres that they spin, definitely see that V-Moda consumers being different than Beats consumers for the most part. The biggest competitor with V-Moda, I'd say, was probably the Sennheiser, not Beats.
That was
maybe Pioneer,
the workhorse headphone that was durable, and I still use the case. I just like the case, that cloth square case I use for holding other things. I bring the V-Modas on the road, but everything else is in that cloth bag. Yeah,
I mean, I'll never forget. I talked to some DJs, and I remember Avicii and I were on a ferry over to Gansevoort, or the island in New York, and he was holding two of those cases, and I'm like, "You want me to hold one?" He's like, "No, this is like my record box, and I was like, "Oh wow!" It's like, this is the future record box for DJs. And I got to hold it, It's like I got to feel that energy, is like as if I was holding my records about to go to a gig. And it's like, oh, I never thought about it that way. And you open up many, like his and many DJs, they open up, they bring a second case and just fill it up with USB sticks and their earplugs, and that's really. I spent a lot of time developing that case to hold your cables, earplugs for safety, and your SD cards and your 1/4-inch cable, all in kind of in that nice little compact exoskeleton shell. So that was a big project, and I think that was a big part of our brand. And all the companies that we sold the headphones to, I remember whether it was Apple or Best Buy, they're like, "How much does that cost?" That must cost like $4 or $5 to include. And I'm like, "Yeah, it does, but it's worth it,
It's part of the experience. It's not like a one-time unwrap.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I'm not going to get rid of that. Like, I'd rather spend $5 extra per package and make the package bigger too. So I had to spend more on the packaging, spend more on the shipping. But I'm like, I really want to include this special case in the box because it's a big part of the brand experience. I heard that some schools, tons of people were wearing them on their backpacks, and then it kind of caught on, and people it became a fashion.
The carabiner clip.
Yeah, the carabiner clip. I remember some kids at Harvard saying, yeah, it became like the fashion item for all the Harvard kids had the case shells on their back of the backpacks. I'm like, that's really cool, man. That really caught on.
Yeah, it's a smaller footprint. I feel like that was my problem with all that DJ headphones was you'd have cases that were even bigger than the headphones and had no storage somehow. Like it was just a poor economy of space.
Yeah. Yeah, and just coming up with little details to hold like the USB sticks and the quarter-inch adapters. They thought I was nuts, and our industrial designer thought I was nuts. But I'm like, I want to come up with every little detail. I want it to fit SD cards, quarter-inch adapters, and I want faders, earplugs, and the cables all to fit in with the headphones. They're like, Val, you're crazy. Like, it can't be done. And I'm like, no, it can be done. So
how did you make the connection with the DJ community? Who was the first DJ to wear V-Modas?
Let's see. Well, I guess how I first made the connection in the DJ community was Paul Oakenfold kind of discovered me. I think I sent him a mixtape or a mix CD one day, and he drove up to my house, and it's like, was this you? And it had some like special remixes that I'd done in Ableton, and he's like, how did you do those remixes? I think it was like a Day and Night Kid Cudi remix that I did on some techno like crazy track, so it didn't even sound like Day and Night anymore. He's like, that's really wicked. Like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, yeah, just Ableton, and this is me. And I showed him my DJ setup, and he's like, wow, do you want to go on tour with me? And I'm like, yeah. Wow. So I went on tour with Paul Oakenfold when he was on the Sticky and Sweet Madonna tour, and me and him would do all the after parties, and that's kind of how I got into DJing and kind of met a lot of people from there. And then me and some of the promoters in LA, when I came back, we started this I Love House Music brand, so I became the resident DJ of that. And then we had a lot of guest superstar DJs with me, and so really kind of brought house music into, so it was kind of planned where we used everyone from Paul Oakenfold to then, I was really good buddies with Tiesto at the time, so he would stop by, and, got a lot of DJs in and out of these little smaller clubs that then made house music much more popular, which was our goal in Los Angeles, to then kind of spread it out into pop music. And it's really cool to see all the artists come and stop by our I Love House Music events to kind of see what was happening in house music and kind of bring that Ibiza style to LA, which then we've played a small part of infusing and making the remixes happen, where pop and hip hop started to blend in more with electronic and what was happening in electronic music.
So the headphones were done and fully formed at this point, and you just had them test them out?
No, I was actually using Pioneers. I think it was the HEJ 2000s, which happened to be my favorite ones that I was kind of trying to beat out. So I would actually even have prototypes of our crossfades, but when I DJ'd, I'd be like, well, I'm afraid that they're going to break because they're all prototypes. So I'd use the Pioneer HEJ 2000s, and then I let some other DJs beta test the crossfades, including some very famous DJs. Even Tiesto was beta testing them before I actually would even use them live, because I'm like, okay, well, I got these other DJs, superstar DJs, to wear V-Modas. But finally, when I got the prototypes better than the HEJ 2000s, I switched over. That was really peculiar because I had to beat them to be able to switch myself, So I was the owner of V-Moda using another brand, but and I'd have the prototypes with me, but I wouldn't use them until we finally signed off. And actually, I think we lost the first prototype. I gave him to, I think it was Tiesto DJ'd in San Francisco at some club, and then gave him to Dada Life, who played after him, and then Dada Life lost them, I think. And then we never found that was the sample that I had approved to be the golden sample, but it was lost in San Francisco somewhere. So
golden unit.
Someone has the first golden unit, but that was the first one that we actually all said, okay, we could actually play with this. This is amazing.
Were any DJs investing in the company?
No, it was pretty much me and family. And I really tried to take, for the longest time, no outside investors, because I really just wanted to move quickly and, not have any outside influences, because even having my family as an influence was like just becoming a little bit hard on me.
Yeah.
So to be able to move fast and make fast decisions, I was trying to do it all by managing the cash flow, which was just nightmare. Every summer we'd be bankrupt. If you think about it, making products is kind of like making Christmas trees, You sell 50% in December, and you never know how much to make, and you have to build them in the summertime. So we pretty much would spend every penny I ever had and could get in the summer. And you just have to guess how many of which model and what color to make, and then hope that by January you kind of shut your eyes and say, okay, what happened? How many headphones, do I have 20,000 left, or do I have 100,000 left? Do I have zero left. I mean, and just kind of shut your eyes after the ad campaign's launch, and then it's very difficult, So I really think I lost a lot of years of my life stressing out during the summer times, and then.
So if you take on too many investors and there's too many people with board seats in a company, does that just slow things down? I mean, you've got too many masters involved, too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there can be the economies of scale and what they can bring in as advisors, and help out. But then, I felt like that nobody knows the business as well as I did. I feel like I had a great pulse on the market because of being so close to the headphone community and DJs and myself and consumers. So, a lot of times an investor would think that they know from their knowledge that you should do this, or you should sell in retail only, or you should sell direct only. They can kind of control or how to design the headphone better because of one thing that their kid said, and kind of hammer you on that. So, there's pros and cons. After I sold 70% of the company to Roland, it was a great learning experience in a few years to be CEO of a Japanese-owned company. And
well, how did you get there?
Yeah, so, we saw that Beats was sold to Apple, and we saw that a lot of other brands that were surviving were kind of partnering up because of the technology that you need to build the future headphones, after, we went from analog to Bluetooth and then to noise canceling and beyond. So obviously I saw that, to compete in the future was going to need a lot more technology partners, and you have to kind of partner up. They came to us to develop a special version for their version of the 808, which is the TR8. They tested, I guess, every headphone in this Japanese shop and said that this is the way that their sound intended for the 808 and 909. And they came to me, and then, I never thought I would sell any of the company, but at the time my mom was having some health issues and my brother was getting out of the Air Force. And so, they wanted to kind of get out of being the owners, and I was thinking, okay, well, maybe this is instead of having them as being the people that are kind of guiding the future, my own family, my brother and parents, maybe it's better to get involved with a technology company and a music instrument company that's like a famous one like Roland. I guess they romanced me with their plan to come out with DJ products, and my dream was always to build a DJ mixer.
They're the heritage brand.
Yeah, and they didn't have a DJ lineup at the time, but they had come up with the IRA stuff and the TR8 stuff and the mixers and the drum, like a TB3, like their 303, their new take on that. So their next stage was to develop their DJ mixer line, which they eventually launched with Serato. And they kind of mesmerized me that I could actually, help develop the DJ line and make mixers for them. And I was like, okay, well, that's my dream come true, is to actually help develop those tools that become the new genres and allow people to mix and make music in a different way was my dream. And to really be involved on the electronic side of that was a dream come true. I mean, that was really great. I remember stepping in the Roland Museum and seeing all their old instruments, from the SH-101s to the Juno 106s to the System 100s and the old analog synths, and just being like, wow, there's a lot of heritage here. And overlooking this lake in the middle of Hamamatsu, Japan, it was really a beautiful time and a really great learning experience for me. And to learn from the Japanese culture and the management there was, who have so many years of experience, and engineers, it was really a life-changing experience. And
yeah. Did they DJ? Do any of them have their ear to the ground in terms of any of them product managers toured?
Yeah. So there's one guy who's a DJ by night, engineer by day, in the one group that makes the IRA and the DJ mixer side versus the piano and drum side. But yeah, really, there's only a couple DJ at night guys and me, and then the rest were mostly engineers that knew a lot about the history and trying to obviously develop the future of DJs. And but they brought in a lot of also DJs all the time in their artist relations lounges, and from Kink to other DJs that would, any DJ that was really trying to integrate live performance or live drum machines and keyboards into his mix, which today, finally in 2020, we're seeing it happen more and more. We're even seeing modular integrated into live sets. But back when I was working with them, that was like 2014, 2015, maybe even 2013. It was still we had just gotten sync capabilities on our CDJs, and no one was really trying to sync up with the drum machines. So, but that was my vision for the future, is that artists should be able to put samples and play a drum kit or melodies in sync with their DJ sets, and then with the extra time that you have on your hands. With the syncing and pitch control that you don't have to worry about anymore, you should be able to add some more elements and remix more live.
Have more control than just playing back stereo masters.
Yeah, and then be able to do more creative stuff than just the flange or echo, which is kind of or white noise, to add a lot more to the production. And then, as to grow as a DJ, I think you should be learning production skills. The first product was at DJ 808, which had the built-in step sequencer.
Yeah.
That they launched.
So Roland buys 70% of the company. Is this life-changing money?
Not really, because yeah.
Do you go on a Lamborghini shopping spree?
No. Actually, I bought a Lamborghini the day I sold our first $50,000 order.
Wow.
And I pretty much was like, yeah, it's going to work out. So just on a leap of faith, that was just with that first $50,000, I bought a Lamborghini. I just put a down payment and leased it, of course. And it wasn't life-changing money. So, definitely it was just one day I was kind of happy in the pool thinking, this is cool. It was more about not the money. It was more like that I wouldn't have pressure in the summertime to be raising money to buy enough products, because I was always borrowing money in the summer to build enough inventory for the Christmas season. Right. So to me, that was just like, okay, I don't have
stress removal.
I don't have to worry about inventory management as much, especially when it comes to money. Yes, I have to worry about inventory, but managing inventory levels in a product-based business, and then different versions for Europe and Asia and different warehouses with different inventory levels, managing the cash flow on that is just unbelievable. That's why Tim Cook I think he did the supply chain management at Apple. It's just a very complex job.
And you'd rather, even though you're a serial entrepreneur, you'd rather focus on the creative stuff.
Yeah. For me to focus on the creative and product design and get that deep knowledge focus is from the users. Really become a user. So whether I was DJing, I really had to really focus on being a DJ, and then be a producer to make the DJ, work on the Roland equipment. I had to really dive down into every little detail of, not only what sonic palettes and the instruments that they want, but then also just even, do we use USB-C or USB-A? These big decisions that, is it too early for USB-C, or is it just right now? So these,
because you can be too early. I mean, too early is failure sometimes.
Yeah. Of course, I always want to be bleeding edge. I'm actually getting rid of everything that's not USB-C now, but I'm trying to. But still, like this recorder that we're recording on today I look at it and I laugh, because I'm like, it's probably the one product that I can't get rid of. That's a old mini USB.
Yeah.
But it's a good product. So
yeah. So, I mean, does it get stressful if you're just doing transactional type business stuff where you have these runways you have to stay afloat of, runways of cash to deal with, but your love is starting new businesses, getting the ideas implemented, and then moving on to the next thing? Or what do you love?
Yeah, so, that's a big question mark that I had in my head when I just was deciding whether I'd leave V-Moda or not. When Roland was very nice. After 3 years, we said, okay, I kind of had a 3-year contract after I sold 70%. And then we said, let's give it 3 years and then see if I'm going to stay or leave. And, it was the hardest decision of my life, whether I wanted to stay with V-Moda or go on my own. It was like giving my baby away. But, I just had to give it some really hard decision and say, am I a founder or a CEO? And that was kind of what they said to think about a lot.
Right.
Can I be the CEO and work with being a publicly traded company, or eventually, or do I want to be more the founder and entrepreneur type and CEO? We're kind of in between, and there was that kind of founder versus CEO level. I gave V-Moda my all for almost 15 years, and it found a good home, I thought, with Roland, and I'm like, okay, it's not going to be some fly-by-night company. Roland's really much in it for the long term, and so I think it was a good time for me to kind of say, okay, let V-Moda grow there while I try to see if I can make a even bigger impact in my next move. You're only alive as long as you're remembered, Right. Whether it was Elon Musk developing, he started PayPal, and then, no one even talks about that. They say SpaceX and his other companies, but he was like one of the founders. I think he coded PayPal, but he doesn't even talk about that as like founder of PayPal.
No one remembers like the early arc of the story usually, which is really where it's all forged.
Yeah, because he made his money from PayPal, and so I was like, okay, what can I do next? It's hopefully bigger than V-Moda, and audio, or make a bigger dent, or maybe even a smaller dent. Maybe I want to just focus more on my own productions and in music creativity.
What's the size of the dent you want? Yeah,
so, right now I'm just trying to experiment with everything, and, not sure what I want to do yet. I do have a non-compete, so I can't make headphones and music equipment for a while, but which is of course my forte. But can try to experiment on making something else.
Do you look for a gap in the market?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I've been looking at, what can I find, like, where a gap exists? Like, colored headphones didn't exist. Can I find another gap like that? And designer headphones didn't exist. I mean, it's now a multi-billion-dollar industry that didn't exist at all in 2004. But as much as I've been looking, I can't find a gap that big. And nowadays you have Amazon Basics and stuff like that. They'll come and all these companies can be super fast to follow you if you don't have something that you can have a patent or build a moat around, whether that's a patent or enough branding or be different enough to really
was that
stand out.
scary with the patenting process? I have no idea how that works. When you are filing your patent and someone else is manufacturing it, does that happen where equipment manufacturers steal patents or things shift around when it's overseas? Is that a scary world?
Yeah, the patent and trademarks is definitely a world I've focused on quite a bit. I actually wanted to become a patent attorney because I really love it. It's actually, every time I met with a patent utility and I came up with a new invention, it's probably my favorite days ever. Still to this day of when I created the 3D printed speakers or 3D printed caps or even the click fold hinge on our headphones. I think I got over 60 patents with V-Moda, and I was like, yes, this is like so much fun. The industry's pretty small in headphones because there's only a couple factories that are now making almost all the headphone brands. I mean, literally you can count them on two hands. Probably one hand that makes 80% and two hands that makes 90% of all headphones in the world. So, it's a small community. If you just tell them, this part is patented by V-Moda, you can't, did you know that? And really tell him, so that way he knows if like Beats or Sennheiser or someone else is trying to use it, they'll kind of warn them about the patent. It's kind of that's at least what I did, when we had a good patent. And then sometimes you want to look at other people's patents and see when they're expiring, whether it was Bose noise canceling or something. So, you got to always be aware of what patents are in there in any industry. And, every little thing can sometimes be patented and sometimes isn't. But
is it sometimes better to not patent things like Elon suggests in some ways, where if you're patenting, you're almost sharing everything very publicly, like a public company?
Yeah, so one of the things is if you patent it, then you have to really show how not only the broad idea, but how it's implemented exactly. And then you have what's called claims, and you have to build on those claims, and you try to, it's kind of an interesting thing where you make it broader, then you kind of define it further with the claims on how detailed of how it exactly works, from a broad to then narrower in scope from the patent. You can usually work around that patent, by not doing it in the same way. You just don't follow the exact same way, but you kind of get the idea from there. So, there's usually, for most things, there's kind of a workaround. There was that big article about the one-click buy, that Amazon had, where you could click one button and buy something, which was a big controversial patent, that how easy that was, and maybe too broad of a patent that maybe shouldn't have been given to them. Something like our click fold hinge, there's definitely many ways to get around that. But the way that we implemented it was different. People could come up with something similar, but they shouldn't do it the exact same way as us. And that kind of maybe challenges the engineers to think differently. And maybe that's also good for competition too, because they can then come up with another innovative idea that's different than ours.
Right.
So kind of builds on each other. So, you just worry about some companies getting too broad of a patent that really shouldn't have been applied, that you just can't get around. And that should be a basic necessity. They call it, if it's not common knowledge in the industry, then it really shouldn't be patentable, or if it's like just too simple. Right. Kind of is a litmus stick of if it should be patentable, if it's obvious knowledge in the industry. And that maybe that one click probably was obvious, that it maybe wasn't that too complex enough to be patented.
So what, in this next act of your life, what's really exciting you?
Yeah, so my first thing I've been most excited about is actually modular and analog gear, and just playing out and playing music myself, and getting into, when I was working with Roland, I pretty much used only Roland products. So to be able to experiment with all the different brands out there and put it together in music production. So I've been really excited about, I think that the state of the musician is really fun right now, and from hardware controllers to modular to synths, and we're seeing a big resurgence of analog equipment, and of course the streamlining of digital audio workstations and the controllers and stuff is really exciting to me. So, that's one area that I've been a big passion of mine, of both performing and producing. Also, just trying out some prototypes myself of building stuff, special products I can't really talk about today.
Yeah.
Another technology that's just really been, that I'm really big into, is augmented and virtual reality and XR, mixed reality. Obviously, keeping an eye on that. That really also folds into the third one, which I'm really in love with, which is immersive audio. What's in the history of that is pretty interesting, because we went from stereo to quadphonic to 5.1 to 7.1 to Dolby Atmos, and then to what they're putting in video games today, and then how it applies also to augmented and virtual reality, or just even into video games in general. Like I think I was telling you earlier, like how whether you want to hear if someone's shooting you from behind in Fortnite, or if you're flying in a spaceship and you want to have a really cool soundtrack or something. I've really been interested in how that works and how the acoustics should be optimized for that. A lot of companies are working on that, even Bose with their AR, and Amazon is doing the 3D audio, Tidal's doing 3D audio.
Studio.
Facebook's doing a lot to push the 360 and immersive audio with their Oculus and all their toolkits. So I think a lot of companies are focusing on, is this going to be the next immersive audio, which is 3D audio? I'm just saying immersive because it sounds a little bit better. I think 3D got a bad rap
with the TVs.
With TVs, yeah, it always was coming there, and then it just kind of disappears. So I'm hoping. I think that's why a lot of people are talking to say immersive audio versus 3D audio, but that's really what it is.
And I guess the curved screens are done, according to Samsung. But.
Curved screens are still good for gaming because it kind of gives you that. Right. I still use curved screens for my gaming experiences quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so immersive audio, and then headphones being optimized for gaming, because that's a big. Obviously, everyone's going into gaming and low latency. So yeah, but I'm also just trying to take some time to explore all my other passions. Really getting in quite a bit to music production myself, also because I really want to explore that deeper path of what I have inside me, and all that training that I took when I was a young kid, and all those music lessons I took that I never really got to apply after college because I was set on that engineering path.
Is it a different kind of flow state, being an artist in the studio versus running a company or developing products, or very similar?
It's actually becoming more similar than I thought because, I'm such a gearhead. So half of my time I'm thinking about like how to set up my gear, which is kind of like engineering a product, how do I set up my studio to be optimal, and, how do I do this MIDI connection, and what's going to be my master clock, and all the little details of the modular integrated into my digital setup. And so that really gets my brain, like, gives me all that energy I need to make my engineering side happy. And especially when you go into the modular stuff, it's just, your head just spins and gets red of all the possibilities that you have, things that you can do with it. Audio, as we know, is very, you have to be pretty technical nowadays to really play with it.
You got to be able to troubleshoot.
Yeah. And it's not just picking up a guitar anymore. Plugging up these electronic instruments and everything is very detailed, and then hooking them all up together. So yeah, I think that really satisfies my engineering side, and then the music production really can satisfy the art side. And so that kind of like developing a product, the engineering of the core circuits and the physical and the industrial mechanical parts. The art part is the sound tuning. During the day, I like to work on the mechanics of everything and the foundations and the plumbing and wiring and how stuff works. And then kind of at night, 6 p.m., kind of have dinner and then switch to actually trying to be more artist at that time. Is kind of fun, And
it's that circadian rhythm. It's so true that people, we were talking about night owls versus morning people. And it's kind of the same thing, though, to me, where that middle of the day is, to me, kind of a creative black hole.
Yeah.
It's better for administrative stuff, like do your calls, do the plumbing.
Yeah.
And then the muse, just something clicks on around 5 or 6. It's just magic. And it's just quieter. The universe is a little quieter then.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, I was thinking about it a lot, like why am I so much more creative, especially when it comes to sound at night. But I think it's also because I'm a very visual person, my visual cortex. I'm looking at everything and I'm taking that in, and at night, hopefully there's less contrast and I'm seeing more black, and then really my ears become more attuned.
It really does change your hearing.
Yeah.
I change, that's why I do like the Philips Hue, different sound, different scenes of lighting. And if I dim the lights more, I feel like I can hear better sometimes.
Yeah. Look at how astute, a blind person is to their hearing. It's definitely, I feel like, at least for some people, and at least for me, my music capabilities and hearing are definitely much more turned on after the lights go off.
Yeah, and it feels like it's almost like clutter makes something feel busy. So like if you have a lot of stuff in your periphery, in your side of your vision, your brain is trying to take in all these different inputs. And if you're paring it down a little bit, you're going to be more focused, probably listen better as well.
Yeah. So whether I'm producing music or when I was DJing or tuning headphones at night, seem to be kind of the best time. And then, of course, you have less distractions too, less notifications from workers. So you take that plus all the visual and distractions that you might have from notifications to just different colors in the room that are kind of, or lights that are distracting you, or bad lighting, whatever the case may be. And it's kind of a fun time to be more creative.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like now, as everyone is a creator, I mean, now it's where, Guitar Center has a whole aisle for podcasting equipment, and for influencers, people are creators in different forms, where they're not just DJs or musicians, but they're creating content in different ways. Do you think this is where it's headed, and things are going to keep catering towards that kind of content creation? It's
amazing to see. Everyone's always like, "Oh, have you watched that TV show?" I've always been a creator. Like, I really rarely consume. Like, I don't have TV. I'll sometimes binge watch a show or something, but, except for maybe I'll try to catch a sports match here and there. I just really don't have time to consume, because I just really want to always create.
Right. That passive consumption, that was more of the mainstream norm, I think, before, right?
Yeah.
Like, watch a sports game, have no agency or interaction with it other than yelling at the TV.
Yeah. Yeah, or drinking beers with your friends. But for me, recently, in the last few years, and what we've seen with the YouTube and content creation generation, whether it's Twitch or YouTube or music or whatever, it's really a golden age for creators. And the fact that they can do it all with even their smartphone is just enabling it. And I think that we've seen the kind of the evolution of creation, where obviously first it was reality TV, maybe, where real people were getting on TV, and I thought that was so stupid. And then social media came, and where people actually had an outlet to kind of create a photo of themselves or an identity online, and kind of be a micro celebrity. And then to where we're seeing it today, where they're actually be called an influencer that might have more influence than a real celebrity. And whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, is really a golden age for creators. And I think that's great. I'm really happy about that. People that normally wouldn't want microphones or sound equipment or headphones are now trying to get the best, or searching out the best lighting for their studios, or to make them look better, whether it's on Instagram or YouTube and cameras, and then we're starting to see it all fold into the smartphone technology, but also the tools that they use. And so I think it's a great era. The only danger is that everyone's creating that news consuming.
Yeah.
So is it what generations are consuming? But but there's so many new niches now. I find myself just watching YouTube. If I watch anything, it's always YouTube, and I find these niche channels of do-it-yourself guys making engineering products or cars or synths. And
is it to become just more of a collaboration, where the consumption is collaborative and you're working together and playing off each other, versus it being a one-way street?
Yeah, that's interesting, because my consumption is always of people doing something that I'm trying to learn how to do, or trying to kind of get more knowledge of that area in this very niche area, right? Whether it's building gaming PC, or so you might maybe like watch some news about the the gaming PC builds, or new video games, or trying to learn more about different ways of building a synthesizer or something like that, and in modular equipment, or just trying to learn more about certain scales. So my consumption, when I do consume, is more kind of helping to feed my creation. Right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of then becomes that circle, or you're watching another video gamer to learn how to become a better gamer. You're watching the Twitch because you kind of want to learn how to be a better gamer, to maybe make your own Twitch,
Yeah. And then you made the headphones that creator loved to make their own video that you watched. Like, it can come full circle again.
Yeah. So it kind of becomes like a higher level of creation, and then there's so much content then. I mean, it kind of becomes the other scary part, is maybe there's just too many different channels of different types of content, and is there going to be
finding the content.
Yeah,
how does it surface?
Yeah, rising above the surface and cutting above the other noise. It's great to be talking about this versus like where we're talking about what I call the great compression, of where there's bad MP3s and Napster era.
Yeah.
We're completely past that now. Now people are able to do, even with the new Samsung phone, like do 8K video in there with just their camera. It's just like freaking amazing. And that's pretty awesome.
And I feel like the technology has matured, where also with the loudness war being less of an issue, like you still have to get stuff crazy loud for the club, but now you can mix with a little more breathing room, because everything's normalized to LUFS, to loudness units on streaming services and on YouTube. So you've got more room to play. It's a little more fun to mix records now, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because if you have more incentive, now that Amazon and Tidal and other companies are getting, and even Spotify and Apple Music have their masters or HD or whatever they call them on their respective platforms, you have more incentive to make it sound better, for not only for consumption in a car or headphones, but for the club as well. We're finally out of that great compression era and into a really new renaissance era of
it's more like fine tuning it now,
of fine tuning and exploration and creative possibilities, and hopefully creating some new genres. It's a great time to be alive in technology, and see all this.
It's so focused now. The trend seems to be more micro niches, or the niche is the norm versus it being just about pop stars and people with the biggest social media accounts. That you're hitting people in a more honest way, in a more direct way, with a smaller audience, but it has more power. Like these channels have fractured more.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at YouTube and look at all the channels, a lot of them are very narrow. And I was going to create a YouTube channel, and I kind of still want to, but
why not?
Well, yeah, I still might, to just cover topics like we're discussing today, or maybe to help entrepreneurs. Because I learned a lot from an idea to selling it, and all the way in between, and selling millions of units of a product, of a widget. And I had a company in different countries. I opened up a company in Asia, opened up a company in Italy, opened up a company in America. So I have a lot of entrepreneurial experience. So, would it be the topic of that, or do I just review other people's headphones? I don't know.
Well, what would you recommend? If someone's a brand new entrepreneur and they have a successful Kickstarter campaign, and based on wins and mistakes in the past, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, yeah. So when I started my company, there was no Kickstarter, Indiegogo. So that's kind of interesting in itself, because we could keep everything top secret until, the whole thing was like, keep it top secret until the day that you launch. Don't even your internal employees, the marketing department can't know about your own products until like a couple months maximum. I had like different levels of secrecy, so everything was super top secret, but, kind of Apple-like. And that was kind of my mantra, is to be ultra top secretive. But to get back to your question, there's so many parts of entrepreneurship and being successful. Obviously, making a great product is number one, and the quality there. And I think that's probably where I see when I'm buying products when I bought a few Kickstarter products, or some of these more niche products that are built. I'm really sad when I look at the construction, and that they rushed it out the door, or something wasn't fine-tuned correctly. We would delay products for years. I delayed the first over-ear headphone and on-ear headphone for 3+ years, trying to fine-tune it and get it right before I launched it, because I know that your success is going to be based on that first product. And if you're doing a hardware product, you can't do a software update. So
it's out the door, and
it's out the door, and that's it. And that you're going to either have a consumer for life that loves your brand, or you're going to have a bad reaction, and then you're going to be dead. So you might make some money at the very beginning. I forget that one of those first true wireless earphones that people were on Kickstarter. I forget the name, but maybe I shouldn't even name the name if I knew it.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
but they promised every bell and whistle and overpromised. I'm like, that is impossible to do. Like, why are they overpromising and under-delivering? And sure enough, it was a disaster. And they went out of business. And
it's like vaporware, because the reality doesn't meet the expectation.
So they always overpromise and under-deliver. It's better to keep it simple and really just get the best ergonomics, the best quality, the best durability. The amount of testing that we did was just incredible to make it durable and last and make the customer experience amazing. Like, work on customer service, that 360 degrees of cycle of ownership from when it does break. We want people to have the best warranty and trade it in for future models, and versus just trying to get out the door with as many features is just a recipe for suicide. Unfortunately, that also is the products that get the most funding on Kickstarter, because it's promising stuff that can't exist.
It's got a good sizzle reel, and the trailer has an amazing rendering of it.
They make a good video, and then they promise the world, but they can't deliver even a city. And it's better to deliver an amazing micro city and then build on that and build it over time, which is what we did. Is you add more features over time when the time is right, and versus throwing everything in the kitchen sink at launch, which is just a mission impossible for even the most experienced companies. I keep on bringing up Apple again, but sometimes we'll announce the white and black iPhones, and then maybe the only one color launches, or they couldn't come out with the charging mat. Even the biggest companies on the planet have serious delays and years delays on products, or can't even come out with them ever. That's very much a reality of manufacturing, and to make sure that the quality is consistent with your brand. So you got to always go quality first, and everything else will follow. If you make a bad product, especially in hardware where you can't do software updates, you're really dead. You're just you might as well just take that money and run right there after the first batch, because you won't get it. You won't be successful. Yeah. And of course, nowadays online, physical retailers is just you don't have to necessarily sell through physical retailers as much as online, which is kind of cool, but also is makes it harder for a lot of new companies. At least when we were selling to many units to a big chain of stores, that really does give you a cash boost when you launch a product,
And they handle the returns. They're the first point of contact for the return.
Yeah, well, from a whole cash flow perspective, it really helps out a lot, to get those big orders up front when you first launch a product. You can sell it online and, manufacture in smaller batches and kind of build it from there. But entrepreneurship is very difficult, no matter which way you slice it, and even more difficult the more years go by and technologies change. 2 to 3 years you might be riding high, but after 10 years and 15 years, that's where you have a whole decade of technology changes, and can you still survive in that age? And every 3 years, I was having to reinvent ourselves and our product lines and technology and fight against huge competitors. When we first started, we didn't have $1 trillion competitors, and now, still today in the headphone industry, some of these companies are $1 trillion companies that you're competing with. So it's
unlimited resources.
Unlimited resources. Yeah. Can you outsmart them, or can you create a niche for yourself? Is kind of what you have to always look at, is where can you find what's your exact niche going to be that you can build and with whatever product you're making.
I always think it's interesting that there's all these books about achieving that first act of success. Mm-hmm. And then there's very few that are about sustaining that success and more about reinvention and keeping it going, like broadening the arc of your career.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at where so many products or companies started and now where they make their money, it's pretty amazing, right? Like where they ended up,
They do a total pivot and they're selling a totally different product.
Yeah, maybe you remember those Jawbone that just was making the in-ear,
What are they now? It's more of the speakers?
Well, then they were everywhere. And then they pivoted into speakers, which was brilliant. The Bluetooth speakers, they were the first popular designer headsets. Then they made the first designer cool Bluetooth speakers. And then that disappeared, and then they went all into fitness. So they pivoted into completely different industries. And they actually were right. At the right time, they went into the right markets, but then they maybe were pivoting too fast. I don't think they exist today, or very limited amount in the sports and fitness tracker space. I'm not 100% sure because now it's all on my watch for my fitness trackers. I'm sure Fitbit and those other companies have found their own niches as well, so maybe they've found that niche. But it's really amazing to watch a company pivot from completely different businesses and whether they're successful or become like Samsung, where they make microwaves to washers and dryers to TVs to phones. And there's Samsung 12 years ago. I remember I bought a TV. I was like, geez, I can't believe I'm buying a TV from a company that makes my washer and dryer. I can't believe that. That was only 12 years ago. And now, I become a Samsung fanboy of their phones and all their new technology. And, they've completely added to their washers and dryers business. And you don't even think of them as washer and dryer business. First and foremost, you think of them as a phone company first. And yet they're probably making the most money on their DRAM chips more than almost anything, which is what most people don't even know. They're, conglomerate and make many product lines, and versus do you really want to laser focus and make that one product or software? That's a big decision too, especially with limited resources. You got to pick your battles wisely, and that's really important for limited amounts of cash.
Did you see the Steve Aoki commercial for Samsung where he's unwinding after the gig with a dishwasher and the fridge and checking what's in the fridge, and then a Roomba delivers him a sandwich?
No, I haven't seen that one yet. Yeah, but
so that's their biggest area where they make the most money, is the chips, the hard drives?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I haven't looked at their financials in depth, but I would bet that their system on chips and chipsets and the RAM and SD, they supply Apple and so many other companies with the SSDs and stuff and hard drives that I'm guessing that a high percentage of companies use their screens and components. So, I know at Sony also in their electronics department is a lot of their core money now is made on making the components and the lenses, different parts. So not just the consumer products that you see every day, but the behind the scenes little parts that enable everything to work. I always say that the future is always in the chips. My interest was always in the chips, and the future, little micro building blocks that make the Legos.
Right. The guts, not the cosmetics.
Because the feature that is in some Qualcomm chip today is going to be what's in the next iPhone or smartphone. And then what's the application that's going to be built on that? So that's kind of always been my secret, is let's look in the chip features. Right. And that chip is going to, eventually a big company like Apple or Samsung is going to use that chip. And then they have to build an app on top of that. And then what's that use cases? And then what's that product or service that can be used with that feature in that chip? So it's kind of the backwards way to look at it. Like we see the new Xbox and PS5 launching, and what you're seeing with, whether it's with ray tracing that came out early, or whether it's 3D audio, I see those future technologies, and that becomes the the features that then benefit the consumer at the end.
Well, it's like the UAD shark chips that they use, where I was talking to Steve Duda, who created Serum, and saying, why don't you just come up with Serum? I'm not a coder, so I don't know these things, but it's like, why don't you just have a version of Serum that runs off, they need more virtual instruments. And sure enough, UAD is launching virtual instruments this year. But obviously you have to recode everything from scratch, I guess. You can't just port that in there.
Yeah.
But maybe that's one more direction we're going to see coming up, like latency-free soft synths within that Luna DAW that they have.
Yeah, I've been really interested in the VSTs and plugin world. As a matter of fact, as a coder myself and as a software coder, I'm going to start coding mixed reality, and I'm going to start coding some plugins. Just at least get my hands dirty and look at what's under the hood there, because I've never tried to program mixed reality or do Unity or 3D software or a plugin. I really don't know what's behind the scenes happening there in the plugins, and I really want to know myself because, as we were discussing earlier at lunch, like, the bit rate that you use in your DAW, I really want to know what the plugin is doing to that, and is it degrading the audio in any way, and or is it just using math so it's not degrading the audio that you put in there? And because if you pass it through 5 plugins, I kind of don't trust what's happening under the hood of those 5 plugins in a row. So.
Yeah, who knows? And who knows how many times it's clipping between the plugins.
Whether it's the levels that are not correct, or if it's something to do with the algorithm of or it's dithering too much or changing the sound. I'm kind of, it's just this unknown world of where your sound's going, and I kind of want to dig deeper under the hood and learn what's happening to my sound. So
you should watch this video with the guy who created the Nexus plugin, and they had to recode it, a good chunk of the plugin, if not all of it, for Nexus 3. But he shows a little bit of the code. They kind of blur it out. But it's so interesting to see the math behind the interface and the treatments in there.
Yeah, so I'm like, Mutable Instruments is this really cool modular brand that makes open source their code, and then even Korg is doing a lot in that area right now with you can build your own synth and then or add in open source effects and open source synth modules. So the code's all on the internet right now, and that's what's really cool about what's happening too from the open source era that we saw in software and Linux and stuff like that, all the way to today, where now there's people doing open source synths and synthesizer stuff in the modular world. If I was younger and even had more time, there's not enough time in the day. Because I already
taking up all your time today.
I already downloaded the open source plugins and I've uploaded them into my Korg instruments and stuff, but I actually haven't got enough time to program them myself. But man, it's an awesome world. From 3D printing to open source code to Kickstarter and Indiegogo. With augmented reality, mixed reality, all the arsenal of tools that young kids have to even us that have more experience have that we can leverage is just it's a great year to be alive. I think this is the 20s are like the new 80s. I think the 80s was kind of a golden age where we saw a lot of developments in gaming and PCs, and then this is going to be another golden age of technology developments.
Yeah, it's exciting times.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we had some fun hanging out in the studio, checking out all the gear. Yeah. And we're going to hear more about these secret projects maybe in a couple of years down the line.
Yeah,
we'll get some teases.
Maybe I'll have a secret project starting to launch this Christmas, but I think I'm going to probably delay it to 2021.
To get it right?
Yeah.
Before shipping?
Maybe even later than that. I'm taking my time. I'm in no rush. I've been really silent in the whole media and social media. This is the first interview I've done in over a year.
Got the exclusive.
Yeah, I've been really trying to hide under the rocks and not do social media and be and really focus all my inner energy into being creative and just give it my all in creativeness. So, yeah, I can't wait to start to get out there and tell about what projects I'm finally unleashing into the world. But again, I'm going to be very secretive of it.
Yeah, I have no idea. Right. Well, setup's looking good. It's great to see the place finally.
Yeah.
Val HQ.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for taking the time, man.
Thanks,
appreciate
Morgan
it.
Page.
All right, so there you have it. Val Kolton, the founder of V-Moda headphones. Excited to see where he goes next, what products he's going to create. Definitely a serial entrepreneur. He doesn't like to sit still for long. So I know he's over in Italy about to launch some new products. So we're going to keep an eye on that. I think one of the coolest things about Val is he could almost see around corners, especially when he was talking about how colored headphones were kind of a nascent category. They weren't around. It wasn't really in people's minds. It's something we take for granted nowadays. But he was able to see the evolution of products much earlier than most people. So that's really what makes a great CEO and a great product designer. He's a stickler for details, especially in the case. If you've seen the V-Moda cases, there's little compartments to hold the headphone adapters, USB sticks. Little details like that have made the product a loyal following. So the little details really do add up, and that design philosophy was crucial to V-Moda's success. So huge thanks to Val for stopping by. Excited to see his new ventures as they launch. You can check out more about him. Just search for Val Kolton on Instagram. He keeps a pretty low profile, but we're going to be hearing more from him very soon. Thanks for tuning in. This is Airwave with Morgan Page. Airwave is brought to you by RME Audio. Innovative, user-friendly, and high-quality digital audio solutions, RME offers a comprehensive range of audio interfaces, converters, and mic preamps, all based around its unique and innovative core technologies. Multi-platform connectivity across Windows and Mac OS and iOS class compliance has earned RME a global reputation for providing support to all users on all platforms. Visit rme-usa.com to learn more.